So let's go with the beginner part. I have come to the index and I have opened course 1, units 3 and 5. I recommend that you have a long look at both, and if you have some time, to unit 1 from course 2 about lists, okay? Because that's what will make up most of our goals for this session. Because this is a more condensed video, I will explain things much faster and stop only at the code part, okay? But please take your time to understand the whole notebook. Have a look. There is a full video doing this explanation much longer. In this condensed video, I will jump almost directly to the code part. Basically, what I explained this morning was that we are going to be doing some iterative programming. In previous sessions, we saw sequential programming, so all the things that we do come one after the other, and we saw a little bit of alternative programming, so the code can branch. In this case, we want to be able to repeat parts of the code, because that will allow us to make much more complicated, much more useful code, okay? This notebook shows, first of all, one way to repeat code, which is the while loop, which is based on conditions. Okay, we see some simple while loops where we always iterate the same number of times, and we also see conditions that are more complex. Okay, for example, with something called search loops that uses Boolean variables to govern the loop condition, the while loop condition, and we see also that sometimes these things can be composite. Let me do an example and make sure that you have read all of these parts before you actually try to understand this example that I'm going to do now. This example is the example about the 6 sixes, okay? In this example, what we are going to be doing is that we are going to generate random numbers between 1 and 6, and we are going to stop once number 6 has been generated 6 times, or we have iterated, we have looped 50 times, okay? And then we will print a message according to what has happened, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do, I have created a new notebook, for example here, new notebook in Drive, here it is, and wait, let's organize this a little bit, and here I'm going to say solve the 6 sixes problem, okay? Problem. So here is the code for the 6 sixes. First of all, I'm going to need a condition, and this condition is going to be double because I need to be aware of whether or not I have found this 6 sixes that I'm looking for, or whether or not I have run out of iterations. So I'm going to need a found Boolean variable like the ones that are used in search loops, and I'm going to need a I variable for the iteration of the loops, and I'm going to be checking whether or not that's smaller than the maximum number of iterations. So I'm going to need this max number of iterations to be initialized somewhere. I'm going to say 50 at most. I'm going to initialize I as 0. If I go from 0 to less than 50, I'm going to go from 0 to 49. I'm going to do 50 iterations. And then I also need this Boolean variable, the found variable, which is initialized as false. Okay, so that allows me, because not found is true and I is smaller than the maximum number of iterations, this will allow me to enter. Here I have an indentation of the loop. Okay. In while loops, also in for loops, as we will see later, we repeat part of our code. That part of our code that we repeat is indicated by indentations. The code that's inside the loop is written to the right. Okay, is for example, if I print I'm going to write it here. So not starting at the same character as the while loop, but 1, 2 characters to the right to indicate that this is inside of here. Other programming languages use special characters to indicate what's inside of what. Python indicates what's inside of what using indentation, using code that starts at a certain level. The indentation needs to be always the same. If I now start writing something here, this will give me an error. Okay, so inside of this loop, everything will be at this point. Okay. What do I need to do inside of my loop? I need to generate random numbers. We could check the notebook to see that when we generate random numbers, we use the randin function. Okay, so we will just copy that part here, and then that is called as rand_num, for example, takes the value randint between 1 and 6. I checked during the lesson that this is 1 and 6 and not 1 and 7 by just googling random randint and opening the Python documentation. And if you look at this in detail, you will see that for what I want to do, I need to generate it with random randint. We saw that in this case, Gemini also completed the code properly. Be careful with Gemini because it's really not very good, but for some simple tasks, it can work competently as a, let's say, faster type of Google search. But be sure to check Google to look for information. There is a Python documentation. There are webs dedicated to making code. Stack Overflow comes to mind, but there are many of them. Learn how to find information for yourself. That's the bread and butter of programmers, and that's a very important skill to develop. Small word of advice: Python has a very huge community, which means that it's easy to get help. It's also, unfortunately, true that some people, probably with the best intentions, try to help but make mistakes. So be careful, look for information, but also always try to check it and use your best judgment. Okay, in any case, here I can generate for every loop one random number. Because this is a while loop, it's very important that I update the variable, the I variable, that governs the while loop. Otherwise, I will have very weird results, as we tried in the class because we had a little bit more time. Okay, what else do I need to do? Well, I need to check whether or not I have, generated 6 sixes. Okay, so if this number that I have generated is number 6, not a 7, a 6, then I have to make a note somewhere. So maybe I need a variable to count how many 6s do I have. Count 6s plus 1. Okay, and I need to initialize that variable too at 0, because at the start I have 0 6s. And that's basically it. After I have done this, I can do an alternative loop. If count 6s equals 6, then I can print generating 6 6s took, and here I convert to string I, which contains the number of iterations, I iterations. And I can also print if count sixes is not 6, I was not able to generate 6 sixes in how many tries? Max iterations. Tries, okay? So now I'm running the code, and here I'm getting one result. I was not able to generate 6 sixes in 50 tries. And again, I might be having some problem with my counts or something. Oh yeah, I'm not updating the found. Okay, I'm counting the sixes, but I'm not updating this found variable. Okay, here I need to update that variable. If the count sixes equals 6, then found takes the value of true. Okay, and now I managed to finish in 40 iterations. I'm not going to stop too much into this, but in order to debug where your errors are, one way, there are many ways to do it, some dedicated softwares which are very useful, but one very simple way to do it is to use the print statement. So for example, here I can print the iteration that I'm at by converting to string the value of I, and here I can print how many sixes I have generated. Count sixes. Okay, and here I can print random every time. Sorry, I can print the variable directly, and whenever I count one more 6, I can print 6 up. Okay, so, and I can make it more visible, for example, by adding lots of exclamation points here. So let's run this one now. Sorry, random is an error because this is high caps and I have written it in long and in small caps, so that gave an error. Now it's working. Okay, so I'm getting iteration 0 with 0 sixes, of course. Now I got 1 6, another 6, another 6, another 6. I finished. Okay, if I give only 30 iterations, in this case I still finished. What about now? Here I was not able to generate 6 sixes in 30 tries. I was only at the third 6. Okay, so this is one simple way to generate the code for the 6 sixes. Let's, for the more advanced students, make this code a little bit more compact. Okay, so I'm going to copy it this way, this very simple use of the while loop, and I'm going to try to make it a little bit more compact. Of course, first of all, I'm going to just get rid of the prints because those make the code quite a lot longer. And then I'm going to realize that I don't really need this not found thing, because all I'm doing is checking if this count sixes is 6. So I can just substitute this for the not found. So while it doesn't happen that count sixes is 6 and the other operation that I had, I keep iterating. Okay. This kind of construction that I have here, random, and then check if that's a 6 and then update the count sixes, this can be done much smaller with a use of the ternary conditional. So I can say count sixes takes the value of itself if a random number that I generate is different from 6, else it takes the value count sixes plus 1. Okay, and now I'm doing the exact same thing without needing the randint and the iterator. Okay, here I was not able to do it in 30 tries. Let's give it 50 tries and see. Okay, in this case I could do it in 41 iterations. This code is the same I did before, but much more compact, using the ternary conditional. Okay, I actually don't need this one. I could make things even shorter with another ternary conditional here. You have an example of that in the notebook, and then I could even make this even shorter with a map, for example, but that would not be very helpful in this case. Okay, so this concludes the first example that we did about the 6 sixes code.